Should humanity resurrect dinosaurs and bring the Neanderthals back to life? Meet the scientists working to revive extinct species. The resurrection of extinct species is no longer the domain of science fiction films like Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom. In fact, it's already happening. Jurassic Park might not exist in real life, but a place called Pleistocene Park does, and it's populated with many breeds of ancient animals. Within a decade, it hopes to have reintroduced the mammoth and other extinct creatures. However, it is unlikely the park will be opened for public consumption on a huge scale. This is no vanity project. Instead, the scientists behind the project are looking to reintroduce the Arctic environment that has been lost and even help slow down climate change as a result. Yet would we ever be able to face down a T-Rex, or another long-dead dinosaur, like they do in Jurassic Park? Well, one man is looking to backbreed the chicken, the closest living relative to the T-Rex. However, I think it unlikely the T-Rex will be on the fast food menu for a while yet. Currently, it is only possible to bring back species from the past million years, due to DNA viability. Which means we are closer to resurrecting the Neanderthal than the T-Rex. In fact, we are already growing Neanderthal, human hybrid brains in a lab. Professor Svante Pääbo is head of the department where this is being trialed. An evolutionary geneticist at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, and the author of Neanderthal Man, In Search of Lost Genomes, he has already led an international team to successfully unravel the Neanderthal genome. Using CRISPR gene editing techniques, Professor Pääbo is looking to distinguish what makes us uniquely human by studying these brains at a developmental stage. However, he still thinks sequencing an entire Neanderthal is a long way off, and is not only ethically unpalatable but unachievable with today's technology. In a civilized society, we would never create a human being in order to satisfy scientific curiosity. From an ethical perspective it must be condemned, he adds. However, there are many ways to die extinct species, and these techniques are continuously advancing. Backbreeding, where you find current species with similar genetics and selectively breed the characteristics back in, is already happening. See the case of the T-Rex and the chicken. However, this takes a long time and, even then, the creature would only be a replica of the original. Then there's cloning. Historically, clones often haven't survived very long. However, success rates are improving since the days of Dolly the sheep. San Diego Zoo has already displayed cloned animals, including a ban, a type of wild cattle. The Pyrenean ibex was the first mammal to be brought back from extinction, even if the first kid only lived for a few minutes. Then there is gene editing, where DNA is stitched together chemically. Missing parts of an extinct creature's genome can be mutated using its nearest relative. This genetic material can then be inserted into an egg, and implanted into an artificial womb. This is the most likely scenario. It wouldn't be an exact replication but very close. But why bring back these extinct species? Would it just be to gawp at? And what are the implications? Many say animals became extinct for a reason, that they were unsuited to their habitat, for instance. But the argument that recent species, like the Tasmanian tiger, were killed by man defeat that point. Their habitats also still exist, meaning they can slot back into the chain of life quite easily. Despite writing a book on resurrecting species, Bring Back the King, author, scientist and comedian Dr. Helen Pilcher says she is not gung-ho about it, and many others aren't, either. Teenage audiences seem most interested in the ethics. They say that we're playing God, she says. Yet she argues that we have always tried to control our environment and there have always been critics. For instance, many people criticized IVF as unnatural, believing we would be creating monsters. Yet IVF has brought joy, and sleepless nights, to hundreds of thousands of people around the world, adds Dr. Pilcher. We are now in the Anthropocene, where Earth is in the midst of its sixth mass extinction due to humans. Somewhere between 30 and 159 species disappear daily, and more than 300 types of mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians have vanished since 1500. Dr. Patrick Randolph Quinney, reader in biological and forensic anthropology at the University of Central Lancashire, UCLan, says that ethics have to come into play when you're talking about resurrecting species. Ultimately, the big question should be why? He says. Why do we want to bring back an extinct organism? For their benefit, or ours? As someone who works on extinct species, part of me thinks it would be incredible to meet a dinosaur or a Neanderthal up close and personal. This is my inner geek talking, but do I think we should bring them back from extinction? No. Extinctions should mean just that. He adds, resurrecting Neanderthals is an incredibly shaky ethical and moral issue. We would not just be resurrecting an extinct animal, but an extinct hominin, and our closest evolutionary cousin at that. From what we know about the biology and culture of Neanderthals, we know that they were socially complex. Should they survive the cloning process, the human diet would likely have an impact since the Neanderthal genome predates the agricultural revolution, so they would not have the necessary mutations to allow them to digest dairy products and processed grains. Neanderthals would also be susceptible to common diseases or pathogens which we, as humans, are immune to or unaffected by. Which is the same as other long-extinct creatures. We know infections are not uncommon in modern birds, which are evolutionary descendants of theropod dinosaurs, so it is possible that theropod dinosaurs, which would have included Tyrannosaurus rex, might be susceptible to modern illnesses, he explains. They would certainly have no evolved immunity to anything the modern world had to offer. In their recent publication, Professor Douglas Macaulay, an ecologist at University of California, Santa Barbara, UCSB, and his colleagues argue for 3 criteria to consider when choosing the extinction candidates: select species with unique functions, concentrate on species that went extinct recently, and only work with species that can be restored to levels of abundance that restore ecological function. He thinks the extinction efforts should be focused on recently extinct animals like the Christmas Island pipistrelle bat, the Reunion giant tortoise, and the thylacine, which would restore a unique function in their ecosystems. It is the same for the passenger pigeon and the mammoth. For instance, mammoth dung meant Arctic tundra had grasslands. Now the ecosystem has transitioned to today's mossy tundra and taiga that is beginning to melt and release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But as Professor Macaulay points out, mistakes may come at a high cost if we can't put the genie back into the bottle. What some are proposing to do with the extinction will be like manufacturing a part from the engine of a Model T and trying to shove it into a Tesla. You just can't take a part and put it into a brand new system and expect it to work without considering how its ecological context has changed. If we lose sight of the true gravity of extinction and overzealously embrace the extinction as a mitigation tool, it would be really easy to manufacture forests, savannas, and oceans full of Franken-species and eco-zombies, he adds. Honestly, the thing that scares me most is that the public absorbs the misimpression that extinction is no longer scary, he says. That the mindset becomes, deforest, no biggie, we can reforest. If we drive something extinct, no biggie, we can extinct it. The World Cup expected to spark mini-boom in prostitution across Russia. Transgender woman told to use male changing rooms to try on dress in Debenhams. People smugglers jailed for 1,400 years after hiding 112 people in Greek cave. Dr. Pilcher agrees with this sentiment. We lose about 30 species daily. We need to start caring and preserve what we have. The extinction should be an absolute last resort. It's much cheaper to save something. Ultimately, everyone wants to save this diverse planet. Do we value what we have rather than try to resurrect the dead, even if we are to blame? Ultimately, I believe, we can and should do both. And if one day I find myself on the wrong end of a T-Rex, then so be it. More, the new robots that will replace babysitters, surgeons and pets this year. More, can tech help to prevent mass shootings? More, would you risk having a brain implant and entering Ready Player One's Oasis?